Welcome, traveler. Tonight, we drift not into the heart of ancient Rome, not into her marble halls or the bright heat of her arenas, but to her edges where the stone roads crumble into mud and the Latin tongue echoes strangely through distant forests. This is the frontier, line drawn not in sand, but in wood and stone, iron and blood. As you settle in, wrapped in the quiet hush of your room, imagine yourself somewhere colder, wetter, wind-licked and lonely. A campfire sputters under thick clouds. The air smells of pine and burnt oil. In the distance, a forest sighs with ancient breath, and beneath your worn sandals, the earth gives a little. The empire stretched far, but comfort did not always follow. Tonight, we will explore those limits. We begin with the soldier, the backbone of Rome's ambition. Not the gleaming centurion parading in triumph, but the weathered man on patrol in Britannia, Pannonia, or Dacia. Then we will turn to rebellion Queen Boudica and the fury she brought down on Rome's arrogance. After that, a quieter form of resistance. Letters scratched onto wood. Gossip frozen in time from Hadrian's Wall. And finally, a glimpse behind closed doors into the lives of the elite. Lives in marble villas contrasted so sharply with the mud and silence of the edges. So, close your eyes if you like. Let your breathing slow. The journey begins now. Segment 1. Why it sucked to be a Roman soldier on the frontier. Imagine yourself standing watch atop a rough wooden palisade, your cloak damp from the morning fog that never seems to lift. You've been stationed here for nearly 3 winters. You were 20 when you joined. You're older now, but only in spirit. Frontier is not Rome. It is not warm. It is not paved. It is not home. Your daily routine, your day, begins not with a horn, but with a sluggish ache in your back and the creak of timber overhead. You sleep in a narrow barrack, shoulder to shoulder with a dozen other men. The air heavy with the scent of old leather, tallow smoke, and damp wool. You rise before the sun. No one speaks much. There's little worth saying. Morning begins with inspection. Your armor segment, tonus be polished. Your boots caligae, often split at the sole from endless marching, must somehow be presentable. The centurion's eyes see everything. Frayed strap could cost you your evening ration. Then comes drill. Always drill. Even if the mud is ankle deep. Even if the wind howls so loud you can't hear the orders. Shield work. Sword stances. Formation. Marching. You drill because discipline is survival. Out here, the enemy doesn't come in lines with flags and horns. They come at night from the trees. Bye. Silent. Fast. The weather, it rains. Then it rains harder. The sky never truly clears. Your cloak, once a vibrant red, is now a muted brown, crusted with old mud and soot. Cold creeps into your bones. Fires are rationed. Fuel is scarce. Sometimes you stand guard for hours in the sleet, fingers stiff, eyes scanning the distant tree line. You learn to live in wet things. The locals glare. Some spit. Some vanish when you pass. They do not see Rome as a beacon. They see it as a boot. You are that boot. You speak a language they do not understand. You worship gods they do not recognize. You wear metal on your chest, and they wear bark and bone in their hair. You are foreign here. You always will be. Trade happens quietly at the fringes of the village. A jar of honey for a bit of iron, but it is never friendly. You are not invited to their fires. Their children fear you. Their dogs bark. Rumors of uprisings never fully fade. Someone always knows someone who hates Rome. The endless marches there are patrols. Always patrols. You march in 3s or 4s deep into the brush. The mud pulls at your sandals. Your pack digs into your shoulders. You carry dried beans, hardtack, and oil in a goat bladder. The nights are the worst. Sometimes you sleep in a ditch, covered in wet hides. Sometimes you don't sleep at all. You learn to listen to the change in bird calls, to the snapping of twigs, to to the way your comrade stops humming for no reason at all. You learn that quiet can scream. Food and illness meals are simple: salt pork, barley mash, sometimes dried apples. Water comes from rivers filtered through wool and hope. Stomach illness spreads easily, so does boredom. There is wine, but not the good kind. Just enough to dull your thoughts. Cuts fester. Colds turn into lung rot. Teeth ache until they fall out. You are not paid well. Your land grant, if you survive 25 years, is theoretical. Sometimes a soldier will scratch something into the wooden beams of the 4 just initials, or a tally of days. One man carved a dog. Another wrote, Roma non vedet. Rome does not see. It is easy to believe that. No marble statues, no fountains, no senators. Just mist, just trees. Just the endless rhythm of waiting for something to go wrong. And yet, there is comradeship. You laugh with your tent mates when the bread goes moldy in a funny shape. You pass stories down the fire line about a ghost in the bathhouse. You carve dice from bones. You gamble. You curse. You dream of home. Some of you will stay even after your service ends. Marry locals. Build farms. Try to forget the years spent watching the woods. Some will never leave. Not because of honor. Not because of glory, just because they didn't make it through the next patrol. Let us now turn from the tired eyes of the soldier to the eyes of someone who looked back at Rome and chose rage. A queen, a mother, a fury, the one who burned what Rome built. Segment 2. The rebellion of Boudica the Fire did not begin in battle. It began in humiliation. A woman stripped of dignity, daughters dishonored, a kingdom betrayed. But we will go slowly. A queen in the mist. Picture now the lands beyond the Roman roads, where the forests grow thick and the fog does not lift until mid-morning. Here, before the empire came, ruled tribes not in marble palaces, but in wooden halls, warmed by firelight and bound by oath. Among them, the Iceni, and their queen, Boudica. Her name, in some tongues, meant victory. She stood tall, it is said, with tawny hair to her waist, and a voice that could carry across fields. Not a queen in silk, but one who rode with warriors, shoulder to shoulder, not from a throne, but from a chariot. Her husband, Prasutagas, had ruled as a client king allowed a fragment of sovereignty under Roman tolerance. He trusted treaties. He believed in compromise. When he died, he left his kingdom to both his daughters and to Rome half and half. Rome took it all, not quietly, not cleanly. The spark after Prasutagas' death, Roman officials came. They seized the lands. Confiscated property, Boudica was flogged publicly. Her daughters there are no gentle words for what they endured. But the chronicles say they were violated, and Boudica was made to watch. Romans perhaps believed this would end resistance, that humiliation would tame the Iceni spirit. But it did not. It stirred something colder, something patient, the silence before thunder. As a gathering storm, words spread not through formal declaration, but by whisper and vow. The Iceni were not alone in their suffering. The Trinovantes, bitter from the destruction of their sacred groves at the hands of Rome, joined her. Others followed. Imagine the quiet countryside of Roman Britain villa farms, new roads, merchant stalls, and beneath it all, a rising current. Men sharpening blades in barns, women weaving war banners, old warriors murmuring oaths they had once thought buried. Boudica rode out not as a mere rebel, but as an avenger. She did not speak of victory in tactical terms, but of justice. The march her army grew as she moved. Tens of thousands, some trained, many not. Farmers, priests, disinherited nobles. They moved as a wave, carrying not siege equipment, but fury. Her first target was Camulodunum, the Roman colony built atop sacred tribal lands. There stood a Roman temple to Claudius. grand and gleaming, yet hated. The veterans stationed there had grown complacent. They laughed when news came of a queen on the warpath. They weren't laughing when the palisades were breached. The temple burned for 2 days. The city fell in silence. Those who escaped were few. The Roman response, Governor Suetonius, was away on campaign in distant Wales. He returned too late to save Camulodunum. By the time he gathered his forces, Boudica had taken Londinium. Londinium, now London, was a fledgling town, barely 20 years old. It had merchants, children, workshops. Suetonius considered defending it, but he saw the numbers, and he withdrew. The city was left behind, and Boudica's forces razed it. Fire consumed the wooden buildings. The smoke choked the sky for days. Next was Verulamium, another Roman settlement. It, too, was burned. In total, Roman records claim that over 70,000 Romans and allies died in Boudica's march. Men, women, and children. It is difficult, even now, to know how much is truth and how much is Roman fear made into exaggeration. But the devastation was real. The end of the rebellion victory does not always belong to the passionate. Rome was patient, ruthless, calculating. Suetonius regrouped. He chose a battlefield wisely narrow, flanked by forest, impossible to flank. Boudica's army was larger, but poorly organized. Behind her troops were wagons, filled with families who had followed, watching from the rear. The Roman lines held. They used discipline where the Britons had rage. The charge of the Roman infantry broke the rebel line, and panic spread. With no escape path blocked by their own wagons, the Britons were cut down en masse. Boudica is said to have taken poison. Others say she simply disappeared, her body never found. The legacy Rome won. The rebellion ended. But it changed something. No longer would Rome and Britain trust in peaceful submission. Forts were reinforced, garrison towns expanded, surveillance increased. And Hadrian, decades later, would build a wall to mark the northern edge. But the memory of Boudica lived on. Roman historians feared her, yes, but they also respected her. Tacitus wrote of her with a strange admiration. She was not forgotten. In centuries to come, her name would be invoked again during revolutions, during war, even during empire. Even today in London, near Westminster Bridge, a statue of her stands, bronze hair flowing, chariot wheels lifted high. But tonight, we remember not the monument, but the woman behind it, who raised a nation in grief and dared to strike the lion's mouth. Let us leave the smoke now, walk slowly into something quieter, colder. Yes, but full of whispers and wonder. Not battles, but letters. Not fire, but ink. Messages carved into thin wood from soldiers who missed home and left behind their words, hidden for centuries beneath the mud. Segment 3. Vindolanda tablets and life at Hadrian's Wall. Let the battlefield fall away behind you now. Let the clang of swords and rumble of wheels fade into the fog. You find yourself instead in a quiet, fortified outpost. The year is somewhere around 100 CE. You are not in the heart of Rome. You are not even in the provinces of Gaul or Hispania. You are at the very edge of Vindolanda, a Roman fort in the wilds of what is now northern England. Here, the wind rarely stops. It sighs through the wooden watchtowers and whispers past the stone walls, curling into the courtyards and kitchens of this outpost on the edge. Life here is not grand. It is orderly, regimented, predictable when not dangerous. And beneath the mud and floorboards, it left behind something extraordinary. A treasure trove of words. What are the Vindolanda tablets? In the late 20th century, archaeologists digging at Vindolanda unearthed something remarkable. Thin slivers of birchwood. It's no bigger than a modern postcard scrawled in delicate Roman cursive with ink. Letters, lists, orders, invitations. written almost 2,000 years ago and then buried preserved by the damp, oxygen-free earth. They were never meant to last, and yet they did. They became voices, whispers from the past. Fragments of daily life, so ordinary they become profound. Glimpses of daily life, imagine now holding one of these tablets, light thin, slightly warped with age. The writing is faint, scratched with a stylus, and meant to be read quickly by a familiar hand. One of the most famous letters is from Claudia Severa, a Roman officer's wife. She writes to Sulpicia Lepidina, the wife of the fort commander, inviting her to a birthday celebration. I give you a warm invitation to make sure that you come to us. To make the day more enjoyable for me by your arrival, the first known handwriting of a Roman woman in Britain, so gentle, so simple, not an emperor's decree, not a military dispatch, but an invitation to a quiet birthday gathering, possibly with cake made of honey and cheese, perhaps figs and dates from far-off provinces, carried by mule and ship across the empire, shopping lists and socks, some tablets list supplies, oats, oil, cloaks, socks, yes socks. There is mention of woolen undergarments, sandals needing repair, of a soldier asking for more beer. Even at the edge of the empire, the rhythm of life was grounded in the familiar. Another tablet records a complaint about a missing delivery of flour. Another, a request for more nails for building repairs. From the commander to the blacksmith, from the quartermaster to the cook, everyone had something to write. Discipline and punishment, but not all the tablets are so gentle. One records the punishment of a soldier who, when absent, without level, left the fort without orders. Another mentions the inventory of weapons, including spears, shields, and ballista bolts. There is evidence of harsh discipline. The frontier was not forgiving. A soldier who fell asleep on watch, who lost his sword, or who failed to maintain his equipment could face lashes, fines, or worse. Friends and familiarity still, among these records of order and rationing, a quieter theme emerges. Connection, letters to family, notes between officers, jokes written in shorthand. One soldier writes to his brother, hoping he's well, and asking for news from home. Another sends a letter back to the continent, likely to Gaul, asking if a certain shipment of tunics has arrived. You begin to understand, these soldiers were not faceless legionaries. They were homesick young men, middle-aged veterans. They missed their wives. They worried about the weather. They argued over pay. Their world feels far away, but their emotions do not. Hadrian's Wall, the bigger picture Vindolanda, sat just south of what would soon become Hadrian's Wall, Rome's northernmost frontier in Britain. Commissioned by Emperor Hadrian around 122 CE, the wall stretched roughly 73 miles across the width of the island. Built from stone and turf, it was more than a wall, it was a statement, a marker that said, "This is as far as Rome goes." Forts like Vindolanda dotted its length. Here, soldiers watched, patrolled, trained, and waited. Some never saw battle. Others endured raids, snows, and sleepless nights. Behind the walls, communities grew. Wives, children, traders, innkeepers, doctors. A whole quiet world, half military, half civilians, crowded in the shadow of imperial ambition. The quiet things left behind the tablets at Vindolanda survived, not because they were meant to, but because someone dropped them, or buried them, or left them behind on a rainy morning. And the earth, cold and wet, sealed them away for nearly 2 millennia. They speak to us now, not in speeches or legends, but in fragments. A missing pair of sandals, a plea for more wine, dinner invitation. Tiny things, but they are enough. Enough to remind us that history is not only grand and loud, it is also quiet. It is socks and friendship, and letters home. Now let us leave behind the wooden tablets and the northern mist. Let us step through the gates of a different Roman world, a world of courtyards and mosaics, of luxuries imported from far-flung lands. We will now enter the Roman villa. Not the battlefield, not the wall, but the country estate. It's the life of those who ruled while others marched. Certainly, let the wind from the northern frontier fade behind you. Let the echo of boots on muddy ground, the scribble of ink on wooden slips fall away. Now the air is warmer, scented with herbs and crushed grapes. There is sunlight, caught in painted walls and still water in a courtyard pool. We have arrived inside the villa. Segment 4. Life inside a Roman villa. Imagine now, standing at the edge of a Roman country estate. It's not a palace, not a simple hut, but something in between a villa, spread wide across the countryside like a stone shell around luxury. The walls are thick, the doors carved. A small dog barks from a shaded portico. Somewhere a flute plays softly, faintly, perhaps only a servant practicing. You walk in. You're not as a guest, not as a servant. Just as a quiet observer, let us step gently through the spaces where Rome's elite passed their days. A house of contrasts, the Roman villa was a strange mixture of elegance and control.
Ow.
There were spaces for display triumphs, with painted gods on the walls. Mosaics underfoot, small fountains trickling in measured rhythm. And then hidden behind those formal rooms, narrow kitchens, smoky with oil and ash. Slave quarters, dark and crowded. Storerooms, baths, latrines. Life in the villa was measured and segmented.
And water was priced.
Cleanliness, at least in appearance, was pursued with rigor. In the morning, light filtered in through thin glass or open air oculi. Servants swept dust with branches of lavender or bay. The master of the house might dine reclining or stroll among his gardens with a scroll in hand, quoting Virgil aloud for no one in particular. Luxury, imported and local everything within these walls whispered of wealth, sometimes loudly, sometimes in hush. The mosaic floors told myths Orpheus, charming animals with music, or Neptune riding seahorses. The walls bore painted scenes from Egypt or red backgrounds with birds perched on golden lines. A painted garden, sometimes on all four sides of a room, to trick the eye into thinking it had no end. Dining rooms held silver platters, glass beakers, and ceramic amphorae marked with the names of distant places. Baetica, Lusitania, Syria, Alexandria. There might be olive oil from Hispania, spices from India, wine from Campania, and garam fermented fish sauce, salty and sharp stored in clay vessels and poured with care. To walk through a villa was to taste the empire. Each object, each flavor, traveled farther than most people ever did. Labor behind the leisure, and yet none of this was idle. Beneath the marble calm was a foundation of toil. Villas were not just homes, they were working estates. Fields stretched beyond the walls, where slaves harvested grain, pressed olives, tended bees, and built terraces. Some estates were managed by freedmen, former slaves, now entrusted with responsibility. Others were run directly by overseers who kept careful records on wax tablets. There was always something to account for. How many sheep had lambed? How many amphorae of oil had cracked in transport? Which tools had rusted and who was responsible? The wealth of the villa was not simply inherited, was extracted from the land. From the people, from the system. Daily rhythm mornings in the villa began with the salutatio clients freedmen or tenants arriving to pay respects to the master of the house. Midday might be for reading, bathing, writing letters, or dictating to a scribe. Meals were taken reclining triclinium-styling couches surrounding a central table. Dinner was the longest, often multiple courses. First course of olives, eggs, and lettuce, a second of meats or fish, third of fruits, nuts, and honeyed pastries. Candles burned in terracotta holders. Wine was mixed with water, never drunk neat tan poured from jugs, chilled in deep wells, or with snow brought from the mountains and kept in straw-lined pits. Paranoia and display, but wealth did not mean peace. The villas were guarded not only by hired staff, but by invisible fears. Poison, rebellion, theft. Slaves might be chained at night. Visitors might be watched. Letters were sealed, messengers discreet, and rumors traveled as fast as carts. Even in the stillness of the countryside, the Roman elite lived with one eye open. The gardens were trimmed, the baths warm, the food exquisite. But behind every display of power was a quiet note of anxiety, as if the owners feared what would happen if they ever appeared weak. The end of the villa. Some villas lasted centuries. Others were abandoned, forgotten, overgrown. Archaeologists now dig through their remains, mosaics cracked, baths dry, coins buried beneath kitchen tiles. We find skeletons of dogs beneath thresholds, jars still sealed. A child's toy in the corner of a collapsed wall. The stillness now is total. But the rhythm of their lives once echoed here. A rhythm of footsteps across tiled floors, of orders barked in Latin, of the slow bubbling of oil in clay pots. And now let us leave this place. Step out of the atrium, past the olive groves, through the gates that once marked property lines, and return to ourselves. We have walked the mud of the frontier, heard the cry of rebellion, read the softest notes of home, and rested in marble stillness. Let us bring all of this gently into the closing moments, where we will end not with a lesson, but with reflection. Certainly, let us now step gently into the quiet dusk of history. Closing reflection. At the edge of empire, the world of Rome was vast, a sprawl of stone roads and whispered oaths, of iron discipline and olive oil, of villas and boots and walls and prayers. And yet, for all its monuments and might, the empire was stitched together by small human rhythms. A soldier counting the days until his discharge, a wife writing a letter in fading ink, a boy sweeping dust from a mosaic floor, a slave, eyes downcast, listening for the master's mood. These stories did not make the history books. They did not survive in marble or bronze, but they lived. And they passed quietly like mist before morning sun. You've walked the damp frontier, where rain fell on tired backs and watchful eyes scanned the hills for shadows. You've seen rebellion flare, not in glory, but in smoke and broken shields. You've heard voices that time nearly forgot, cratched onto wood, caught in the hush of daily routine. And you've stepped into the careful silence of power where luxury brought no peace, only echoes and expectation. The Romans are long gone. The walls crumble. The villas are dust. Even their gods are silent now, but the rhythm of their lives, in its quiet way, endures. In the letters we still write, in the work we still do, the comfort we still seek. And so now, with the empire folded up like a faded map, with torches dimmed and sandals set aside, you may let your eyes grow heavy. The past is far behind you. The night stretches ahead, calm and wide. Sleep well, traveler of time, and dream gently beneath the stars, not of emperors or armies, but of small moments, soft voices, and the steady breath of history. Good night.